Welcome to this episode of Sunny's Silver Linings. Sunny's guest today is Don Ribar. Don is a partner at TTG Inc. and has spent more than 2 decades working in global consulting, in client-facing consulting roles, as well as global operations. He has been both a one-man band and led global teams. His experience with both has helped him to learn and grow to help all types of clients achieve their goals. And now, your host, the founder and CEO of IT by Design, Mr. Sunny Kaila. Over to you, Sunny.
Don, thank you so much for joining me as my guest today. I'm so excited about our conversation today.
Me too, Sunny. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so it was, so first of all, thank you so much for your partnership. We enjoy working with you, and it's really, get to learn a lot more about your company, your culture, and you as a human being. And it's a blessing. So thank you for your partnership.
Thank you. We've enjoyed working with IT by Design as well.
Yeah, so let's get into this. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your entrepreneurial journey, your leadership journey?
Sure, absolutely. So I started right out of college with what is now Accenture, and spent 20 years as a consultant and in internal operations for them, both in kind of client-facing roles as well as some internal operations roles that kind of gave me a bit of a global exposure to that organization. I left there in 2008 and joined a startup, which was a very different experience, and didn't go so well for the funding of that company in 2008, which was also an opportunity to then go out and start my own managed services provider. So I've been working in the managed services world for about 10 years through a variety of companies as we've sort of grown, and there's been some mergers and acquisitions in there. But currently I'm a partner at a company called TTG, where we do both voice and data managed services. And it's been very exciting to be part of that team and delivering top-notch managed services to our clients.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that journey, beautiful journey. And so what is your leadership signature, Don? So when it comes to how do you lead, right? What's your leadership style?
Great question. I guess, one of the things that I've always thought about is I'm really oriented around everybody who's part of my team understanding what we're all about. So I think that it's quite common in organizations as people come and go that then they need to understand what's your culture all about, what are your clients all about? Because I really think that delivering good service for us and in most situations is really understanding what your customers' problems are and what they want and need. And so it's, for me, that kind of aspect of leadership has really been around communicating the context of what we're doing so that people on the team, and I guess I would emphasize even the junior, or especially even the junior people on the team, have some understanding. Because I think that gets them more engaged, which is really critical these days to keep employees engaged. But it also helps them provide better solutions. So it's not just executing a process. I did process consulting back in the day, and I think people can go through a series of steps and get something done. But if they really know why that's happening, and sometimes when a step needs to be altered or changed, you get to a better solution. And that's what clients really want. They don't want a cookie cutter solution all the time.
Yes. Yeah. So why, right? So why is so important? And I know when we were prepping for this, talking offline, you give a great example where, when you ask someone, what are you doing, and how they approach that conversation. So can you share that with us?
Yeah, well, and I think what was funny is I realized that there's probably 10 different flavors of that exact same analogy, but I'd always heard it in the story of in a medieval city, there's a large construction project going on, and a priest is walking down the street and he sees these two stonemasons working. And he walks up to the first one and he says, "What are you doing?" Yeah. And the stonemason says, "I'm laying stones." And then he goes to the second one and says, "What are you doing?" And that person says, "I'm building a cathedral." And so when I talk about that idea of context and communicating the context of what you're trying to accomplish, it's really that idea of knowing what you're there for. You may be only doing a relatively seemingly small part, but it's still an important and necessary part, and to know where your work fits into the overall objective.
Yes. And no, it's thank you for sharing that communication with context. And I have personally experienced it as well, Don, that when I ask the team member, "Can you do this for me?" That's one thing. I get that commitment level is different. But when I give them that little bit of context, that how their activity or their project is going to make an impact, how it's aligned with the vision of the company and the company's strategic objectives, then their commitment level and the buy-in is a very, very deeper level. And so I have personally experienced when you're communicating with context, giving them why and how it's going to make a difference. It's a game changer. And
absolutely. I've seen, just training new people, helping them understand, okay, your job is to do this. Maybe it's a help desk activity, but a person who needs support in organization A may be very different in organization B, just in terms of how you talk to them and what their likely unspoken concerns may be. And I think when you can help your people understand what that's all about, it will help them do a better job. And they're going to like their job more. And the client's going to give them better feedback. And that's really a win for everybody, but it's not organic. You need to really force it to make sure that people, or I should say, it's not something that comes without investment in time and attention by team leadership.
Yeah, it takes time, and it takes, you've got to be able to spend a lot of quality time with people to really give them that context. So you also talk about, clarity, communicating with clarity and authenticity. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I sometimes I find myself to be a little cynical, and I look at the way people communicate these days, and I feel communication has been so well taught that people are so good at messaging and not actually saying anything at all. And particularly in a corporate environment, I've sat through presentations, PowerPoint presentations, just verbal presentations. And you're sitting there going, that person talked for 15 minutes and they didn't actually say anything. That was, relevant, understandable. So, that's sort of a double-edged sword, right? People get taught effective communication techniques, which work, but people get over-messaged. I sometimes use that term where it's just using, corporate speak and gobbledygook. And it's really about trying to be very to the point. And as part of that, I also think people need to be authentic in who they are and understand different leadership styles. And some people view leadership as they want to, stand around and bark orders and have people just execute. And other people tend to be a little more collaborative and get their hands in. There's servant leadership, right? There's different flavors of that. And I think, there's the colloquial expression, you do you. I think that applies to leadership as well.
Yes. So being authentic, I get it, right? It's so important, because if you're not authentic, then no matter what you're saying, how you're saying, it's not going to land well. sooner or later, people are going to find out.
Right.
Can you talk to us? I understand when you say, okay, when it comes to communicating with clarity, be to the point, because there's just so much going on that you got to be on point and really make it, short and sweet. What are the other strategies that you have used that worked for you to communicate with clarity?
Personally, one of the things, and I still have this to be a challenge, I tend to be a very detailed-oriented person.
Mm-hmm.
And so and this is a continual focus, always had to be aware of self-editing, right? How do you get the key points out? And it also gets back to this idea of knowing your customer and your clients and what they want and what their level of expectation is, and making sure you frame things in what the message is in a way that they're prepared to receive it.
Mm-hmm.
I have one of my best clients loves to just say, "Stop. Why do I care?" And we have this back and forth. Right. And he often challenges us to kind of get to that really key nugget of what is relevant to his organization and what is relevant to his role in the company. But at the same time, making sure that indeed we have all the supporting detail and rationale behind any given recommendation or, suggested decision. And that takes time in building a relationship to kind of develop that level of trust, but it gets around be very clear, but be very succinct. But you also, in my view, you got to tell people how it is, which is not always pleasant.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. So be clear, be authentic, and also really making sure that we understand people's, how people kind of perceive information, right? So communication styles are different, and also being able to speak straight. And sometimes people, it's not something that people want to hear, but clarity involves being able to speak straight, right? And being authentic and being able to speak straight. And
I think particularly, Sunny, when it comes to bad news, that's where a lot of the mixed messaging comes through worst. in that people try to sugarcoat things sometimes, and you can always find something positive. This is the Silver Linings podcast, right?
Yes.
But at some times you still need to deliver a tough message, and I think that's where sometimes people just don't like to give that message.
Yeah. No, I am totally in alignment with you that being able to, having the love and respect, but being able to speak straight and do, especially when you are conveying that bad news, because bad news is going to be bad news. And
right.
No matter how, if you want to be, if you kind of sugarcoat things, and it's really not then being open, honest, and transparent. As long as you're, sharing bad news from that place of honesty and love and respect and greater good being at the center, then you got to be able to do that, right? And one thing that I'm going to share my personal experience, Don, that IT by Design, it's a common challenge, right? And it's always evolving in terms of being able to communicate effectively and being able to communicate with clarity and authenticity. It's always going to be work in progress, as long as we are intentional about kind of being aware and intentional about being, improving every day, and the way you mentioned earlier. So at IT by Design, in the beginning of this year, we have gone through this training called Collaborative Way Training. Such a great training. And I still have, so after the training, what we did was we printed this and gave it to all the leaders. And it's well aligned with the messages that you just shared. So 5 ways that they kind of really preached and that we are practicing because we love this is being able to listen generously. So listen generously is number one. Number two is being able to speak straight, without blame game, being very clear and direct requests. And number three is being for everyone. And being for everyone sometimes also means that really helping them understand what they don't want to listen, right? So they want to listen what they want to listen to. And being there for your team members, what we have learned and what we have adopted here is sometimes you have to be able to share that bad news with the person, right? That is being there for that person. And then honoring our commitments. Say what you do and do what you say type of mantra. And the number five is being able to share acknowledgments and appreciations. Those are the practices, the collaborative way practices that are helping us being more effective and impactful when it comes to communication and collaboration at IT by Design. And you also talk about being there for the customers and your employees. And so what does TTG talk about being client advocates and Bulldog concept?
Yeah, so thank you. So I don't have one handy, but the mascot, if you will, of TTG is a Bulldog. And we're a 30-year-old company. And we started out primarily in the voice services space. Mm-hmm. And we were founded by our current CEO, who worked on the provider side of telecom. And he started the business basically realizing that what telecom companies do is make an awful lot of money. Mm-hmm. But don't always provide the right level of service commensurate with that. And so TTG was really founded as a chance to take some of that industry knowledge and sort of put it more on the customer side of the equation. So we do a lot of managed services and voice regarding telecom expense optimization. And essentially, for example, we have a number of our customers who send their have their telecom invoices sent directly to TTG. These are organizations that often have a lot of locations. So all their data circuits, voice circuits, other sorts of telecom needs come into us. And we act, in some respects, we do an accounts payable type process, but we actually look at those invoices, trend them, raise disputes on their behalf. So it's quite common for a provider to turn a service on and never turn it off. Yet the bills keep coming, and the traditional accounts payable department often says, "Well, I guess I better pay this because they say they're going to disconnect our service." So the whole idea of the Bulldog is really that tenacious, persistent, very aggressive pursuit of what's right on behalf of the customer. So actually, a lot of our employees really carry client advocate, customer service advocate as part of their job titles. And that's how we train people and inculcate them into the organizational culture that we have, which is really, you need to be very detailed and follow through and not give up. And we've found numerous examples over the years where we've raised disputes in the 5-figure range, sometimes even the 6-figure range on behalf of our customers, and they've received these big refunds, which they never would have been able to receive. So, people always say, "Oh, our services pay for themselves."
Yeah.
Sometimes they do, actually. And that's an ongoing challenge. So but that whole idea of really trying to be persistent and diligent and detailed oriented on behalf of your client is something that we really push for at TTG.
Yeah, no, that's a great approach. And I can personally relate to that. And I will share that with you. But with the So at TTG, the mantra being there for the customer first, that voice of customer is so important in every business that is out there, right? So businesses that are really sustainable, they're successful, they are really adding right value to the customer. They are very close to that voice of customer, and they are their advocates first. And I love that. And personally, in the telecom world, when I look at, go back and reflect on my experiences. So Don, my first job was in New York City as a system admin. And you know what happened during my first day? My boss came to me and he gave me all the telecom bills.
Right.
And, so I'm like, I'm not even properly like onboarded, like a week, 2 weeks training. And he said, while you're going through this onboarding, and I remember this was a company, small, medium-sized business in New York City, 47th Street and 3rd Avenue. And they had multiple branches. One was in Florida, one was in New Jersey. And he said, Sunny, I don't know what's happening, all these telecom bills, and I just want you to review it. I just don't feel good about something with these bills. And if you remember, I'm talking about 2000, when we had, we had our kind of DSL or cable modem or T1s and point-to-point Ts to connect multiple locations before the MPLS and other things came into the picture. And I was the technology guy, right? And those are the experiences I remember. And when I have gone through all the telecom bills with their POTS lines that were feeding the PBX box with the T that was there. And a lot of those lines were not acquired, and some fax lines and everything else. When I worked with all the telecom providers at that time, it was more of Paytech being there in New York City. And we ended up saving a lot of monthly expense. And that was, so within like first 6 months, I got a big raise just because I saved a lot of money by working with just eliminating a lot of expenses that were not required. Someone just kind of signed up for that one fax line in some location, or the point-to-point T1. The agreement was written a couple of years ago. That's how it was going on. But then the price had changed. So I ended up saving a lot of money. But the telecom provider, the PBX box provider, where they gave out all the lines and everything, they were not being there for it. I had to really work with everyone. And there was a lot of blame game as well. Whenever something will go down, and it was, no, it's not me, it's the T1 provider. That's why the voice quality is low. Or, so there was just so much back and forth. And I'm like, I wish there is a company who can be really there for me as a customer. And, I see so much value, and there are not too many companies being there as advocates for the customer. So thank you for sharing that. And that is key to success. So now I want to go deeper into this, the voice of customer. So what are you doing at TTG for your customers that are so impactful? Can you share some strategies how a small business can be there for the customer as their advocate?
I'm going to pause.
Yeah, that's okay.
Let me get a drink of water.
Yeah, no problem.
Can you?
Okay. So Don, what are the strategies that you use to make sure that you can have a practice to be there as an advocate for your customers?
Well, we actually try to capture our activity over time so that we can demonstrate to our customers that the value that we're building on their behalf and maintaining on their behalf is there and it's attended to. I think most managed services providers get a question every now and then from their customers that says, everything seems to be going great. Why do I need you here? And so it's really important to have that supporting documentation to really say, here's what we've been doing on your behalf, and here's why you're experiencing the good performance, financial or otherwise, that you're seeing. and frankly, to plant the seed in their minds. And if we're not here, where does that come from? Who's going to do it? Right? I think if you're going to be a services provider, you need to show the value proposition to the customer, which may be a direct savings, but also allowing their people to do higher value, more critical things. We do some of the very, ugly and unsexy part of IT, but somebody's got to do it.
Yes. No, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Don, for sharing your insights, your experiences. And I love those 3 points that communicate with context, communicate with clarity and authenticity, and be there as an advocate for your customer and your people, and so that you can add right value to people that you serve. And thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to pause now a little bit before. So Don, I have one more question for you. That is, what is the greatest lesson you have ever learned?
I would say it's believe in yourself. And I say that for a couple of reasons, but I think when faced with adversity in the past, be it professional or personal, and I've had adversity in both aspects of my life, certainly, I think it really is incumbent upon people to kind of be able to look within themselves and figure out, what do I have around me? And how can I take advantage of that? And what do I know? And what do I know of what I've accomplished in the past? And really trying to refocus that. And that's kind of how I've tried to, deal with adversity, and just really kind of trust in myself. But at the same time, realize that there's always somebody else to help, friends, colleagues, family members, and you can always lean on people. People actually want to help. So kind of my feeling is believe in yourself, and along with that, take advantage of what you do have available.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what I'm hearing is that believing in yourself and reflect on what worked for you in the past, so that you can stay on the gain side, on the positive side, to deal with whatever obstacle that you're facing, and really learning from your past and repeating what worked for you. Thank you so much for sharing that wisdom. And once again, thank you so much for coming to my podcast. I truly, truly appreciate your time and being there as our partner. Thank you so much.
Sunny, thank you. I really enjoyed it.